This is your Thursday Daily Delivery. I am Michael Rand. So much to get to today. Marcus Fuller from the Tribune covers the Gophers men's basketball team. Will be with me in a little bit. That season starts on Tuesday. Hard to believe it's that soon, but here we go. Gophers under Ben Johnson, first-year head coach. We'll see what they are able to do this season. Should be kind of a rebuilding year. That's a polite way to put it. Marcus and I will talk a little bit more about the roster, what to expect, and a little bit more about Ben Johnson. Big story for Marcus coming out on Ben Johnson in Sunday's newspaper. Also talk Timberwolves. Boy, they can't have it. They can't have both sides of the ball. We talked to Chris Hine on Wednesday's show about the offense struggling so much. Well, they scored 115 against the Clippers on Wednesday night. That would have been enough to win a lot of their games this year. Unfortunately, they gave up 126 to Los Angeles. Tried to push the pace. Didn't exactly work out, at least not in the win column. Maybe they feel better about their offense right now, but they can't feel good about that result. So I'll talk about that a little bit more. PJ Fleck's contract extension, that's a big deal as well. We'll get to that. And the Minnesota United playoff picture starting to come into focus. I will mention that, although I think Jerry Zgoda will be on Friday's show to help break down what is at stake this weekend for the Loons. But first, what did I miss? Wow. Wednesday was quite a day for Aaron Rodgers. Got caught in his big vaccination lie. Said in late August that he was, quote, immunized when asked if he had been vaccinated against COVID-19. Yeah, he wasn't. He was got COVID, been placed on the reserve list. We know that he isn't vaccinated because of the protocols he's in right now. If he was vaccinated, he would at least have a chance to play in Sunday's game, but he has been ruled out for that game. Will have to sit out a minimum of 10 days under the league's protocols. Now, didn't he say he was vaccinated in late August when he was asked? Well, here's what he said at the time. Yeah, I've been immunized. That was during a news conference with Packers media in late August. Now, there's guys on the team that haven't been vaccinated. I think it's a personal decision. I'm not going to judge those guys. So, he didn't say specifically that he'd been vaccinated. So what he did instead was, now that we know he wasn't vaccinated, was worse than an outright lie. It was a misdirection. It was a sleight of hand. Tried to have it both ways to create the illusion that he was vaccinated. Now, apparently he had some sort of alternate treatment. This is according to an ESPN.com story. Petitioned the NFL to have it count as being vaccinated. The league said no. And he's been following some protocols since then, apparently, but he hasn't been following all of them. He was at a Halloween party dressed as John Wick, and he certainly wasn't masked at that. So what is he doing? You know, he's leaving people to answer for him, by the way, right now. Matt LaFleur, head coach, got asked if him saying he was immunized was basically was that creating a false impression that he'd been vaccinated. And LaFleur said, it's a great question for Aaron. I'm not going to comment on it. So, Kirk Cousins got absolutely hammered a month or two ago when it became evident that he was not vaccinated, that he was putting, his season at risk, the possibility that he could miss games for the Vikings in this pivotal season. Aaron Rodgers deserves all that scorn and more. This is worse than Kirk Cousins. Now, both of them are dumb for not getting vaccinated. Just get vaccinated. It's not hard. It's science. You should go with it. But Cousins has never flat out said he isn't vaccinated or tried to explain his decision, and he's never tried to create the sense that he is vaccinated. Aaron Rodgers absolutely tried to create the sense that he is vaccinated, even though he is not. Why does that matter? Well, it matters from a lot of perspectives. One of them, written about by ESPN's Rob Demovsky. Here's a passage from his story. Sources said Rodgers follows masking protocols while interacting with players and coaches inside the team's headquarters at Lambeau Field, so that's good. However, Rodgers does not wear a mask while in the media auditorium during his weekly and post-game news conferences. The Packers have put other unvaccinated players on Zoom instead of at in-person media sessions. So, sounds like the Packers were complicit, perhaps, in trying to create this illusion as well. Now, if you're trying to figure out what's the upside in all this, why would he go to all this trouble to try to create the impression that he's vaccinated when he's not. Well, the upside is making it seem like he was one thing, reaping the social benefits, even if he didn't believe in that thing. It's a half measure, and again, it is worse to me than an outright lie. And why would he do it? Well, he thought he'd get away with it. That's what people in power do. That's what people with ego do. That's what people who are used to getting away with things do. They do it because they're used to doing it. They're used to getting away with it, and they assume that even if they're caught, they can get out of it. And I'm assuming that's what Rodgers thought. It's like, hey, we've got him fooled. I probably won't get COVID anyway. Nobody's going to know. It's all good. And then he gets COVID, and here we go. Pro Football Talks, Mike Florio had a take on the why. Paragraph from Florio, quote, "Here's why Rodgers abhors criticism. If he'd been open about his unvaccinated status, he would have heard about it from the media. And so the guy who is so sensitive that he's sensitive about being called sensitive chose to create the false impression that he's vaccinated, all because he didn't want anyone to call him out for not being vaccinated." Spot on. Absolutely true. And again, that's why, to me, this is worse. He's trying to create a false impression rather than just outright saying, I don't want to get the vaccine, which, again, I don't think I would respect that more, even if I wouldn't respect it, but I would respect that more than trying to lie about it than what he did in this case. So just a real strange, unfortunate story. We hope Rodgers is okay, by the way. He has COVID. COVID is serious, even if you are a professional athlete, even if you are at the peak of your physical health. We hope he recovers from that, is able to play as soon as next week against Seattle and has a full recovery from it. I don't know what he's going to do. I'm not sure what he's going to say when he speaks about this for the first time. Is he going to try to say that, he was honest about this and that people just misinterpreted what he was saying? Is he going to come clean and say, I messed up? I don't know. I do know this. He will have plenty of time to do his own research into what he is going to say.
Take a playcation to Mystic Lake. With 24/7 gaming, the good times never have to end. And you can satisfy your cravings at our restaurants and bars. Or relax in one of our luxurious hotel rooms. Those that play together, stay together. And don't forget to join Club M so you can spark new memories and bask in the rewards along the way. Follow the lights to Mystic Lake, where every day is play day.
Joined on Daily Delivery today by Marcus Fuller. Does a great job covering the Gopher men's basketball team for the Star Tribune. That season begins Tuesday, believe it or not, against University of Missouri, Kansas City. And they played an exhibition game already. Marcus has a big story on Ben Johnson that will be in Sunday's paper, new head coach of the Gophers, of course. I want to talk to Marcus about all of those things. Marcus, how you doing?
Pretty good. I enjoy, as always, being on the podcast. Gopher basketball season's finally upon us, though, so maybe this will be a weekly occurrence.
Weekly, semi-weekly. I don't have the beat writers. I don't usually get them on every week just because it would get a little bit repetitive. But I did start. I'll offline. I'll mention a couple things to you that I've been doing with Chris and Sarah, who cover the Wolves and Wild, that I think helps give us a little extra coverage here on Daily Delivery. But maybe we can start, Marcus, with your impressions from the exhibition game. They did win that game, so Ben Johnson gets on the home floor and at least gets to see what it's like to win. What stands out to you from that first game, even if it wasn't for real?
Well, first off, I was glad to have fans back in the building, back in the barn. I was glad to be back there myself. Not with just only a few media members. Last year it was just I wouldn't say unique, but it was really an experience that maybe and hopefully we'll never have to go through again. They had some big wins last year, Iowa, Michigan State at home, and the players are celebrating on the sideline by themselves, and that was just bizarre. Like you said, they beat Concordia St. Paul. There's not much celebrating going on with the players on the sideline for that one. But I would say that, I think the fans were glad to be back in the building. They cheered on Ben Johnson when he was introduced as the head coach for the Gophers. That was a special moment for him, as I wrote for the Gamer. When they saw the team play, it was an entirely new team. So it was their first chance to see a lot of these new players. Eric Curry and Peyton Willis are the two former Gophers Big Ten players, but everyone else, they're from mid-major programs. Jamison Battle led the team in scoring with 24 points. He's a De La Salle graduate, but he played at George Washington for a couple years. So, a lot of these guys you're going to get to know as the season progresses. But what I gathered from the first game unofficially, I think that this is a team that will have to shoot the ball extremely well to be competitive. They don't have much in the interior, but at the same time, they have a lot of experience, college basketball experience. What does that mean? That means mid-major level, but it also means that guys that know how to play basketball, they just haven't played it at the high major Big Ten level yet. And really, they're not going to see Big Ten competition for a while, but they will see some pretty good teams in non-conference.
Yeah, I want to get to that in a little bit. Do we get a sense? I mean, I'm sure in an exhibition game, everybody gets to play. Do we get a sense for what the rotations might look like, who they're going to lean on, like what different player combinations look like they might work effectively together?
I was surprised that the freshmen didn't play as much. Lathium and Trayton Thompson, who's a Minnesota native, played at Alexandria a few years ago before transferring to Indiana prep school. I thought they would play more, but again, we mentioned before the podcast started that they had a close scrimmage versus Oklahoma. That was the only other opportunity they got to scrimmage and play another team or opponent besides themselves. So I think it was important for Ben Johnson to get, his experienced players. Yes, they played college basketball, but not together. So I think he wanted to get those seniors, a sophomore and Jamison Battle, but really is a junior. I think he wanted to get the core of his team playing together as much as possible before the real thing. I think Trayton Thompson, with his size at 6'11", he's going to have to play this year. The Big Ten is loaded with quality big men. They're starting off with Illinois and Michigan State, Michigan, those types of teams. So I think that, getting development out of freshmen like Trayton Thompson will be key early in non-conference season. But again, in that game, I was, Peyton Willis is a guy that played in the Big Ten before. He had 20 points, 5 assists, 4 rebounds. These stats, are they going to translate to the regular season? Probably not in the Big Ten, but it was good to see a guy like him that, he's being looked at as maybe the captain, the guy running the show, the point guard, possibly their leading scorer, to have that kind of confidence right off the bat. Not only that his teammates had confidence in him, but also that Ben Johnson has the confidence in Peyton to kind of be that catalyst.
So like you said, they start the year with Missouri, Kansas City. That's a team that's, was about 500 last year in their conference, but the Gophers beat them by 29 last year. So I feel like, that might tell us a little bit how they fare in that game, kind of should maybe set some expectations. And it gets harder right away after that. I mean, Western Kentucky, they got to go on the road. It's a neutral site game, but, they're playing that, with that tournament out there, right? With Western
Asheville,
Kentucky,
North Carolina, Asheville, North Carolina,
and Asheville.
The team that beat UMKC by 29 is an entirely different team. So,
sure.
They played a Division II opponent in exhibition. It was competitive. I think every game that the Gophers play, whether it's a 500, middle of the pack, mid-major team or a Big Ten opponent, it's going to be, tough go because they haven't played together. And also a lot of these guys have not played at the high major level. So I think UMKC will probably give them a competitive game just like Concordia did. But, at this point in Ben Johnson's tenure, all you can do is try to see improvement from game to game, from the beginning of the season to the end. How they compete versus UMKC will be very interesting. If they do find themselves trailing at one point, it didn't happen against Concordia. but it will likely happen earlier in the season. I believe that quite a few of Patino's games last year, early in the year, even though they finished undefeated in non-conference, were very close, and the Gophers were trailing it a lot at home, including going into overtime to have to beat Boston College, one of the worst teams in the Power Five.
Speaking of Ben Johnson, let's maybe kind of spend a little bit of time here talking about, you got a big story coming up in Sunday's newspaper. I'm sure that'll be on StarTribune.com as well, about the new Gophers coach, a lengthy, profile of who he is, but also kind of, what lies ahead for him. This is, very early in the journey, certainly, trying to lay a foundation here. What stood out to you in the reporting of this story? Maybe kind of give us a little taste of what to expect in that Sunday story and what you know of Ben Johnson at this point.
Well, he's a guy that I've known since he played for the Gophers, and a lot of people have known since he was a De La Salle star in high school. I think some of that, just reminding people how good of a player he was. Ben's a modest guy. He's not, he's not bragging too much, but he has a guy on his staff that'll brag for him, and Dave Thorson, who was the former De La Salle coach when Ben played. Just having those two guys together, being around the team, you could really get a sense that, yes, he's a first-time head coach. He's trying to figure things out as far as the style of play, the offense, defense. He's got an entirely new team. And so each day is kind of a new day for him, getting to know his players. Yes, he knows Thorson very well, but Thorson was never coaching with him. So a lot of times, he'll allow Dave Thorson to kind of take over practice, and especially on the defensive end. But at the same time, a lot of the players that are the two players that have been around Ben before, Peyton Willis and Eric Curry, they said that he's a lot more vocal. He was kind of a quiet guy, just kind of was behind the scenes, helping the program, obviously recruiting and being a player's coach when he was an assistant for Patino. And now you can clearly see that he's running the show. Yes, he allows Thorson to have his say on defense in some other areas, but he really does try to take control of practices. He brought his players in for team coach-player meetings quite often. And he's got his own background as far as coaching, having come from Xavier most recently, and what he learned there. So I think that Ben is a little different from Patino. Yes, they both came into the Gophers with little head coaching experience with Patino and none for Ben Johnson. But I think that from this profile and just early in the season, you're going to get to know him a little bit better. Behind the scenes, whether he's at practice, whether he's at games, he's pretty much the same guy. He's modest. He's kind of a homebody. He's got his dog Bruce and him at home. He doesn't have a wife, no kids. It's just right now, it's just basketball and Bruce, basically his dog.
Good stuff, Marcus. Last thought for you. I mean, I think most people who are realistic think this year is going to be a pretty big struggle for the Gophers. Whatever comes of it, victory-wise, will be, a little bit of just a little bit of a bonus. But with college basketball, it is as it is with Ben Johnson having a reputation, at least, and an earned one of being a good recruiter. What's and the transfer portal being what it is now too. What's a realistic timetable for you to say, okay, this is when we should start to see this program being, competitive on a level that it wants to be competitive again?
Yeah, that's a good question, because I think that, teams now can reload, regroup pretty quickly with the transfer portal. Even some of the Giants, some of the Blue Bloods, like a Duke in Kentucky, who didn't make the NCAA tournament. You can all of a sudden, hit the transfer portal and pick up some experienced players. They don't have to rely on one and dones. So it's across college basketball. It's not just teams like the Gophers who will probably find themselves, toward the bottom half of their conference. Nebraska is a team that, coached by Fred Hoiberg, that had 11 newcomers last year. They struggled quite a bit. And this year, out of the transfer portal, they brought in some high major players, and they also added into the mix some high-level recruits, freshman recruits. And all of a sudden, they're picked. They're not picked last. So I think that next year you'll see his recruiting from the freshman class. You'll see a couple guys possibly make an impact, but then he'll have to hit the transfer portal and find some high major talent that can help them turn around quickly. Patino was able to do that a few years ago when he brought in guys like Reggie Lynch and Akeem Springs to also go along with Amir Coffey, Eric Curry, who's still on this team. And so I think that there's a mix of, high school recruiting, local recruiting, which he's already done, and then bringing in transfers. And, the one thing about Minnesota high school talent is there's a lot of players out there in college basketball, that are having success, and they also might want to come home. With the one-time transfer rule now, if it is their first time transferring, they don't have to sit out. So that's one thing that the Gophers could have going for them, in year 2 or year 3, is that you'll see the high school recruiting from Minnesota or elsewhere, but you'll also see Minnesota talent maybe coming back and helping them have success sooner rather than later.
Well, we'll see what kind of foundation they can lay this year. Make sure to read Marcus's story in Sunday's Star Tribune on Ben Johnson. Gophers season starts Tuesday. And yes, Marcus will be doing a lot more of this as the year goes on. Thanks for joining me here today on Daily Delivery.
No problem.
Enjoyed catching up with Marcus. Interested to see how Ben Johnson does with the Gophers, this year and beyond. I think it was a good hire, an interesting hire. Can he be their version of Lindsay Whalen, where, Whalen came in, the cupboard wasn't quite as bare when she came in, but she's had to kind of build this program back up. And now, like I talked about on a show last week, they have the number 7 recruiting class in the country coming in 2022. Things looking much brighter for that program right now. Can Ben Johnson do the same in recruiting? Can he bring in the types of players that are going to turn this program around? And most importantly, can he recruit within the state of Minnesota? Can he be their PJ Fleck? Can he come in and make this a nationally relevant program, which PJ Fleck, I think, has done? That's a good transition point, by the way, to PJ Fleck's contract extension. 7-year extension announced on Wednesday, pays him $5 million a year. And, most importantly, probably for everyone involved, should at least put to rest the idea that he's going to go to another school. And at least if we take his comments at face value, and we should be able to, right? He's now, in the upper half of the Big Ten four-way tie for 5th pay-wise among Big Ten coaches. He said as things start to come about, talking about distractions from, the USC job opened up earlier this year, and his name is part of that speculation. As things start to come about, especially when you want to be somewhere, you make that happen and eliminate the external noise because that can be a distraction for your players. I don't want to be that distraction. Later on in the story, he said, I absolutely love the state of Minnesota. My wife, Heather, loves living here. Our kids love being here, and it's really a special place. It's home for us. We get to make a life here, not just a living, and that is a very difficult thing to find in our profession. So, Coyle said he wants to send a message to the fan base, the athletic director, Mark Coyle. So, all in all, he's earned it, right? They're off to a good start again this year, 6-2, 11-2 a couple years ago. Last year, 3-4 in the COVID-shortened season. But I give coaches a certain amount of grace for anything that happened last year because you're just trying to get through it. You're trying to get better. You're trying to propel yourself forward. So, basically the 2 last full seasons they've had have been quite good. Chance for a special year this year if they can do what they hope to do against Iowa in a couple weeks and Wisconsin a couple weeks after that. And, I think he's earned that right to have that distinction in the conference. And, I think Gophers fans should hope that this contract does signal what they hope it signals, that PJ Fleck will be here for a very long time.
AC out there in the flat. Is the ball thrown in low? That isn't Snooker's fault.
Now, we haven't played that clip for a while from the late, great Jerry Burns, but want to use it as a way to get into the Timberwolves game against the Clippers on Wednesday night. Like I said at the outset of the show, Wolves had been struggling on offense, had been playing better on defense. Those trends were reversed in a 126-115 loss that felt a lot more like last season than this season. The clip was reserved for the Wolves' two best second-year players, Anthony Edwards and Jaden McDaniels. Anthony Edwards in the game, 11 of 21, shooting, 28 points, 6 assists, 3 steals, 3 rebounds, a +9 in his 38 minutes. Jaden McDaniels, 29 minutes, 5 points, a +10 in the game, and some excellent defense. So particularly when Edwards wasn't on the court, in the 10 minutes Edwards wasn't on the court, the Wolves were outscored by 20 points on Wednesday night, and that just can't happen. He injured his knee, came back in the game. Sounds like he's going to be okay. So that's a good long-term thing for the Wolves to bank on from that game. But they need more than that. They were playing without D'Angelo Russell, who was out with an ankle injury. Patrick Beverley subbed in the game. 10 points, 10 rebounds, 8 assists against his former team. Looked pretty good doing it. He's a little bit of a roller coaster ride, but he's a gamer. He will play. Karl Anthony Towns, 18 points, 11 rebounds, 4 steals, 3 assists, 6 of 16 shooting, not great for Cat. He missed a lot of two-pointers, which is maybe not unlike him, or not like him, but I'd like to see a little bit more offensive production from Cat. Malik Beasley made 4 threes, but it was a -22 in his 27 minutes. So, the main takeaway from this game is that they did at least get the offense going a little bit. Maybe they can take some positives out of that. Hope that the Clippers, in the rematch on Friday, they play again at Target Center on Friday, don't shoot the ball quite as well. But big picture of this is this. Wolves had a very favorable first 8-game schedule of this season. They were going to play 7 of the 8 at home. They had a bunch of, mediocre to bad teams in it. They got to play Houston. They had to play the Pelicans twice without Zion Williamson. They had Orlando, Denver without Jamal Murray. And then even these Clippers games, the Clippers are a good team still, even if they're just 3-4. And when they have Paul George and some of the other guys they have, they're a good team. But they don't have Kawhi Leonard right now, so they're missing some of their star power. This was an opportunity to really jump out to a good start this season, and I feel like they've squandered it. They're 2-4 at home. They have that nice surprise win at Milwaukee. The rest of the year, though, has been flat-out disappointing so far. I know they were 3-1 at one point. I know they had that nice opening night win against an awful Houston team, and everybody got excited. Well, guess what? Not much good has happened since then. They've not been playing well, and now they've got one more against the Clippers, and if they can't take advantage of that, they're going to be 3-5, and then they're going to go on a 4-game road trip against some really good teams. They get to play Memphis, they get to play Golden State, they're going to play the Lakers, and they're going to play the Clippers on that road trip. So they can't take advantage of not taking advantage of this, stretch at the beginning where at least you get out to like a 5-3 start. Take care of business against the teams you're supposed to beat, and instead now they're kind of staring down at like, okay, well now looking at potentially being 3-5 if they can't beat the Clippers in this rematch, and then going on the road where things like Chris Hine and I talked about the other day have fallen apart on them typically in seasons. This thing could start to get away from them quickly, and that's not great for a team that has playoff or at least play-in aspirations. Let's finish quick with the cooler. Like I said, we'll talk more about this on Friday's show with Jerry Zagoda. MLS standings are pretty clear right now after some Wednesday results. Minnesota United will make the playoffs as long as they can secure a tie in their game on Sunday against LA Galaxy. They have 48 points. They're in 5th place right now. Vancouver has 48. The Galaxy have 47. That's the top 7. Real Salt Lake and LAFC down there at 45 points, so they could jump up and tie at 48. But both of those teams, by the way, Real Salt Lake and LAFC, play Sporting KC and Colorado, respectively. Both of those teams still have a chance to get the number 1 seed in the West, so they have something to play for. So a couple ways the Loons could get in: tie or better, or hope that both of those teams don't win. I'm not going to get into the complicated tiebreakers that might ensue if that happens. I'll get into that more with Jerry Zgoda. But just know this, the Loons will be in if they can get at least a result on Sunday. That'll do it for me. That's like I said, Jerry Zgoda on Friday's show, as well as Mark Craig with his NFL picks. Hope you enjoyed it. We'll be back at it on Friday.